There are stories that sound like something from a film, but sometimes they become famous not because they are the most dramatic or the most frightening, but because they contain something that stays with you: details, emotion, and strange moments that nobody has ever fully explained. One of the most well-known UFO abduction cases in the world took place in the United States in 1961. The main figures were a married couple, Betty and Barney Hill. They were not people who spent their lives chasing the paranormal. They were not looking for fame. They were simply driving home, until one ordinary night turned into a mystery that later became a legend. A normal journey that became the beginning of something strange. Betty and Barney lived in the state of New Hampshire. In September 1961, they were traveling home after a holiday. The road was long, dark, and almost empty. Journeys like that are usually boring. Darkness, very few cars, nothing but headlights and the steady sound of the engine. But at some point, they noticed a light in the sky. At first, it seemed like a normal star, or perhaps an aircraft. But it moved strangely, not the way planes usually move. The light shifted position, almost as if it was watching them, and at times it appeared to be getting closer. And here is a detail that matters. They both saw it. It was not one person's imagination. It was two people witnessing the same thing, which makes the story feel more serious, because shared experiences are harder to dismiss. The object comes closer, and suddenly it's too close. Betty and Barney continued driving, but the strange light seemed to follow them. With every mile, the tension grew. They stopped, got out of the car, and looked up into the sky. At one point, the object came so close that Barney decided to look at it through binoculars. And this is where the most unsettling part begins. Barney claimed he saw a large disc-shaped craft. It did not look like a plane. There were no visible wings. It seemed to hover and move without any obvious reason. But the most frightening thing was something else. Barney said he could see figures inside, silhouettes that looked like living beings. Imagine that moment. A dark night, a quiet forest road, silence all around. And you look through binoculars and see something that should not exist. Barney panicked. They got back into the car and drove away quickly. A strange sound and a gap in time. And it was right then that the key element of this case happened. The famous missing time. As they drove, they heard a strange noise. It has often been described as a buzzing or a vibrating sound. It repeated, almost like a signal being sent. After that, everything becomes unclear. They kept traveling, but later they realized something didn't make sense. It felt as if they had suddenly woken up much further down the road, far from the point where they heard that sound. And the strangest part was this. It felt like only a short time had passed, but in reality, they had lost around 2 hours. 2 hours that didn't exist. 2 hours they could not remember. This is one of the most common patterns in abduction stories. People remember the journey in fragments, but in between those fragments, there is a blank space. Unusual details, clothing, the car, and their behavior. When they finally arrived home, they felt deeply unsettled. Not just tired. Something else. Anxiety, a cold feeling inside, a tension they couldn't shake. Later, they noticed several odd details. Betty's dress was torn. There were unusual marks on their shoes. Strange marks were found on the car. And most importantly, both of them felt intense fear, but couldn't fully explain why. After that night, their emotional state began to change. They suffered from poor sleep, anxiety, and intrusive thoughts. Barney, in particular, struggled. He experienced stress, nightmares, and it was clear his mental health was being affected. This doesn't sound like a story told for attention, because most people wouldn't choose to live with consequences like that. Hypnosis and memories that sound like science fiction. Later, the Hills sought professional help, and one of the most debated parts of this case involves hypnosis sessions. Under hypnosis, Betty and Barney began to recall events they could not consciously remember. According to their accounts, something like this happened. They were stopped. They left the car. They were surrounded by small beings with unusual features. They were taken aboard an object that resembled a craft. Inside, they were examined. Barney said he felt helpless, as if he couldn't resist. Betty described the beings as calm, almost as if what they were doing was routine. She claimed she was shown something like a map of the stars. Later, she even tried to draw what she remembered. That detail became legendary because researchers tried to work out whether she could have invented it herself or whether she genuinely saw something unusual. Why did this case become so famous? The story of Betty and Barney Hill became a landmark case for several reasons. 1. It was one of the first major UFO abduction stories in American history. 2. They were an ordinary married couple, not people obsessed with the paranormal. 3. Their key details remained consistent over time. 4. The story contains powerful elements: a craft, fear, missing time, hypnosis, and psychological after-effects. There is also an important social context. They were an interracial couple at a time when that brought intense pressure and judgment in the United States. Some believe their stress may have been influenced not only by that night, but also by the reality of their lives and the tensions around them. A bit of criticism, where doubts come in. To keep the story honest, it's important to say this: despite how famous it is, there are still major questions that have never been fully answered. 1. Hypnosis is not a perfect source of truth. Hypnosis can sometimes help people access memories, but it can also create false memories. The mind may unconsciously fill in gaps with imagination or suggestion. 2. Missing time can have other explanations. Exhaustion, stress, long-distance night driving, or brief lapses in attention can all create the feeling of a time gap. 3. Cultural influence matters. In the 1960s, UFOs were becoming a major topic in American culture. Certain images and ideas may have shaped how the brain interpreted events afterwards. 4. But one thing remains: they believed something real happened. Even if it wasn't a literal abduction, it is clear they experienced something that deeply affected them. Their fear was real. Their emotional reaction was real. And that is what makes this case so powerful. It remains a mystery, and the line between reality and the unknown has never been fully drawn. The ending. The story of Betty and Barney Hill is not just another UFO tale. It's a story about how one night can leave a mark for life. And whether you believe in abductions or not, one question still remains: if it was imagination, why did it disturb their lives so deeply? And if it was real, why does humanity still not know the truth?